Hey everyone, this is Darrie from Method. Recently, Method main raider Deepshades posted an article on Reddit that covered very thoroughly a list of potential improvements and suggestions for World of Warcraft. The post also included what he felt they were doing right, and some concerns even going as far back as Mists of Pandaria. We're going to break down some of the highlights of the article, but we do hope you take the time to read the entire thing on your own. You can find the link right here, as well as below. One of the biggest concerns in the article is the pruning of class abilities, which makes many classes frustrating and even boring to play. Deepshades thinks classes are the most important thing in the game. If you don't like the character you play, you'll most likely not want to do anything in the game because you're not enjoying yourself. Currently, most specializations miss abilities to make them fun and entertaining, especially since Legion, most classes have even become boring. It feels like the latest talent trees are specialization specific, instead of class specific. Nowadays, you have to specialize either for single target or AoE, and Deepshades doesn't think this should be the case. In previous expansions, you could do both, and talents just helped you improve it. According to Blizzard, they started removing abilities because the classes were already perfect and didn't need anything. The only way to keep introducing new things is to remove old features. In reality, it turned out that players kept losing abilities, and some classes like Warlock, which is what Deepshades mains, haven't gotten any new abilities since Mists of Pandaria. Legion and Battle for Azeroth not having their own talent rows are a perfect example of this problem. But let's break down a closer look, and we'll again use Warlocks as an example. Here you can see a Mist talent tree. Let's go over the rows. In the first row, you had a choice of different self-healing abilities to make your life easier. Dark Regeneration and Harvest Life were good choices, while Soul Leech was passive. The second row had several options for crowd control abilities. In the third row, again a row with choices that made your survivability easier. Fourth row, different utility abilities like a Dispel or an additional movement ability. The Demonic Circle used to be passive. The fifth and sixth row changed your playstyle, but nothing that made or broke your class. But let's take a look at an Affliction tree from Legion. In the first row, you'll see the ability to increase your damage. Malefic Grasp is a must-have for single target, and Writhe and Agony for multi-target, and Mythic Plus. Haunt is completely useless. In the second row, Empowered Life Tap was really only good for Mythic Plus. Absolute Corruption was really situational, and Contagion again a must-have for any single target encounter. In the third row, you see Demonic Circle, which is not passive anymore, sharing the same row with two abilities for crowd control. In the fourth row, Soul Harvest, which is the only proper offensive cooldown, sharing the row with an AoE ability, Sow the Seeds, and something in between. Phantom Singularity only was picked really situationally, and Soul Harvest should just be baseline instead of a cooldown like Summon Doomguard or Infernal. In the fifth row, survivability and movement choices. Warlock has no movement cooldown baseline anymore. The sixth row is the same. And in the seventh row, Siphon Life used to be useless most of the expansion. Soul Conduit is super RNG, and Death's Embrace is really truly OP in a lot of encounters. So as you can see, Warlocks lost 15 abilities in the last expansions. Obviously, some of them are still available as talents, but that means something else got removed. This is why Deepshades firmly believes Warlocks were so weak at the beginning of Legion. Before, you could choose utility abilities to make your life easier in every aspect of the game, and rotation, damage, and healing-wise, your class was pretty balanced. Another concern is the reward system in World of Warcraft. We're going to break down 3 aspects of the game, but again, you can read a lot more about reward system flaws in Deepshades' full post. First, raids. Players want to get rewarded for completing a raid. He doesn't feel that gear alone is enough. Mounts should always be the absolute minimum, and not even that is always granted. Kil'jaeden is a great example. One of the hardest bosses in the game, and it didn't give you anything. Good players should also be rewarded for clearing a raid early on. Realm First titles, or at least something like the first 200 players, should get a special reward. Blizzard could also introduce toys that are fun to use, like transformations on certain bosses. Mythic Plus. Gear should scale way better than it's doing right now on the live version. Blizzard could also introduce a form of currency that's issued in the weekly chest that grants you bonus rolls. Other useful items like flasks, materials, and things like bloods could be included in the chest. Completing each dungeon on a certain level should grant you the teleport like it used to. And there should also be titles, like in Mists of Pandaria and Warlords of Draenor, for the people with the highest or fastest server key. Rated battlegrounds also suffer from a lack of decent rewards. Rated battlegrounds should have the same reward system as Arena. They should get the same mounts that Arena players obtain, and new titles each season. Making changes to racials is another way that Deepshades feels the game could become more interesting again. Racials should be a funny side feature, and not something to consider seriously when creating your characters. People like to play World of Warcraft to live out fantasies and play certain races because they like them, not because of a required racial for that player to feel competitive. He would recommend removing abilities like Blood Fury or Berserking. This might also help the balance between Horde and Alliance on many servers. In the past, professions used to be important, but Deepshades feels in the current game they've lost all meaning. He understands Blizzard doesn't want them to give you any advantage in terms of damage, but Blizzard could bring back fun and unique bonuses. Here's a few of his examples. Blacksmithing. An option to enhance the entire armor with Indestructible, so you never have repair costs. Or enchanting. Have a secret weapon enchant that no other people have access to. The problem is, for some professions like jewel crafting, they get outdated. Blizzard needs to introduce something during the expansion to keep them all on the same level. Story development had its ups and downs through Legion. Suramar was one of Deepshades' favorite parts of the expansion, and in fact, he calls it one of the best zones in the game ever. The storyline was well thought through, and you could notice changes in the zone. It was dynamic. However, Broken Shore and Argus were the complete opposite. The quest lines were poor and felt unrewarding. Riddles like the Lucid Nightmare were perhaps one of the best features of Legion. Communities worked together on this project. Discords were filled with several thousand players at the same time with a common goal. People that are interested in solving riddles and lore-related questions were having fun and being rewarded with unique mounts. This is definitely something that Deepshades thinks Blizzard should bring back more often. Mythic Plus is undisputedly one of the best features of Legion, but Deepshades did share some things that he felt needed adjusted. Mythic Plus should be more about struggling in time as you go higher, rather than having problems surviving mechanics like Focused Lightning from Lady Hatecoil. He understands it shouldn't be too easy, but a lot of classes are limited the higher up you go, and it shouldn't be quite so extreme. Higher keys should scale way more with life points instead of damage dealt by enemies. That way, people would concentrate more on finding good routes instead of farming avoidance gear or leveling new characters because their mains can't survive certain mechanics. Another improvement to Mythic Plus would be creating seasons. Mythic Plus should be like PvP, something seasonal with rewards. The top 1% and top 5% get specific titles and mounts. Every player that participated in a Mythic Plus season should also get a certain currency. This currency could allow players to buy transmog, weapon enchants, toys, or more. A large part of Deepshades' post talks about improving the experience of raiding and player enjoyment. In his opinion, there should really only be 2 difficulties of raiding. Perhaps instead of LFR, Deepshades suggests that Blizzard could create a story mode that people can play by themselves where they don't have to find big raid groups. It would be an interesting idea for players to fight end bosses without being required to queue into LFR. That way, everyone can have the chance to see everything. He does, however, believe that there should be challenging content that not everyone can do within just a few pulls. In his opinion, challenging content motivates people to get better, and then in the end, they play more. Here's his idea. There should be 2 difficulties, like back in Wrath of the Lich King. Heroic should start at a difficulty like the 7th or 8th boss of the currently normal raid, and end around the same boss in Heroic. Mythic should start where the new Heroic ends, and finish on a difficulty with a boss at the caliber of Lei Shen, Blackhand, or Archimonde. Another suggestion for improving the experience of raiding and player enjoyment is bringing back 10 to 15 man runs like Zulamon and Scholomance. Deepshades thinks many players would find this a cool feature, bringing back smaller raids like ZA that you can do immediately cross-realm. This would give an incentive to play with your friends and give you variety from your usual guild raids. He suggests adding a timed run mode that awards a unique mount that's really hard to obtain in the beginning. This video has covered just a fraction of Deepshades' post, and we highly recommend you read the entire thing. Be sure to let us know in the comments below which parts were the most interesting or controversial for you. If you liked this video, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to us to know when new content is being released. Thanks for watching, and on behalf of Method and Deepshades, we'll see you in the next video.